Our intent of the podcast is just to provide you with some information and to give you a status on the FDA ruling from the other day on Biohaven's pharmaceutical drug triluzole. And so here with me today, I have Dr. Jeremy Schmaman and also Melissa Beiner, MD, who are going to speak to this issue in a lot more detail than I can. Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you right now.
Okay, great. So, I think we're coming together now to talk about the fact that spinocerebellar ataxia is a rare neurodegenerative disease. It is a fatal disease, and it's a disease where the first gene was discovered in 1993. Patients have been waiting 3 decades now for a treatment option. And the research has been slow in coming. Biohaven conducted the first registrational trial in SCA, and we're disappointed to report this week that Biohaven's filing for a new drug application for triluzole for the treatment of SCA has actually received a refuse to file from the FDA. Part of the reason to explain why we're disappointed in that decision is that FDA regulations and guidance, including the Act for ALS passed by Congress, clearly offers regulatory flexibility in the rare neurodegenerative disease space that is not offered in the common disease space. And what does that mean? So the FDA refused to review this filing because the study did not reach its pre-specified primary endpoint, which was looking at all SCA genotypes. Now, why did Biohaven look at that as a primary endpoint? We didn't really know how the different genotypes were going to respond within the trial over the course of 48 weeks using the new scale that we were using. And then we ended up seeing this signal in SCA3. The FDA has not only reviewed filings in the rare neurodegenerative disease space where the primary endpoint was not met, they have also approved drugs for filings where the primary endpoint was not met. So we feel like the SCA patient community as a whole, they have a right to have this filing reviewed, to have it stay in court, to have the FDA look at the entire efficacy package the way they have for so many drugs and make their decision. Because the unmet need is so high, because there are no therapies offered, we feel that it takes that right away from the patient community to not allow this filing to even be reviewed.
Thank you, Melissa. And Jeremy, you work with these patients. What would the FDA reviewing this mean to these patients?
Well, Dana, I get up every morning for the purpose being to see our patients with ataxia, try and make a difference, work with patients and their families to make diagnoses, understand the disease, and provide the care that we can at the moment, which is all supportive care. It's good in many respects, from physical therapy to drugs for spasticity, for things that can help with gait and speech. But these are all supportive measures. There's no treatment for the disease yet. There was an initial attempt to try gene-modifying treatments of SCA3 in particular, and that was halted because of difficulty. So there is only one study that has been performed in a comprehensive manner and completed in the SCA space, which has had multiple sites around the country involved, a large number of patients, and Biohaven has led the way, and we're grateful to them as a field for having pulled us together as a field to really learn how to conduct clinical trials. So this has been a learning experience for everybody. And in that learning experience, we didn't know which of these diseases within the different kinds of spinocerebellar ataxias would respond. Would one respond better? Would one respond worse? I remember the conversations early on, people saying, oh, SCA3 wouldn't respond because of this reason. Maybe SCA6 would respond for that reason. So there's a lot of learning that went along with this, and that's why it was necessary to do this as a group. Now, I've not analyzed the data myself. I'm on the front lines with patients and our research staff here, evaluating patients, doing the exams, trying to be as careful and meticulous as we can in scoring how they're doing. And then the data gets analyzed at Biohaven Central. What we're hearing from the teams of statisticians working on this is that in one of the groups of these patients, the spinocerebellar ataxia type 3, Machado-Joseph disease, the commonest of the inherited dominant ataxias in the world, in that population, there were less falls, and there was a stability over time that was better than the natural history data would have suggested. Now, that's the first piece of encouraging news that we've had in the space since I've been doing this for almost 40 years. I'm not making any comment about how strong the data are, whether it's enough to get a drug through, but I think that I speak for the ataxia community, and I'll come back to this in a second, when I say that there is an expectation by patients who have these diseases that the Food and Drug Administration needs to pay attention to them, needs to hear them, needs to honor them, and needs to respect them. And when this is the first filing in this space that's been received by the FDA, given all that's going on in terms of leeway for these rare diseases, if there is an opportunity for FDA to see this as a way for them to review the data, then I guess we're asking them to do that. And I'm just the physician involved in helping out. I think that the power of the response will come through our primary spokesman organization, the National Ataxia Foundation, and with patients who have ataxia around the world. I think that this is a call to action. I think that the patients who have ataxias need to be as vociferous as those who have other diseases, ALS. We didn't have an ice bucket challenge, and now we're finding ourselves getting the short end of the stick here. And I think that people have a reason to be upset. We would like, in this community, to be taken seriously. And when the drug company, the first of its kind, to produce something that can go to the FDA, presents some data, I think it's not right that that data not be looked at by the FDA on its own merits, to then make a determination. Is there enough information in the SCA3 patient population to make a determination that this is a medication that would be useful? That's their call. That's what they do. That's their job. But it's also their job to take a look. And I think that this is the reason to have this conversation is to really fire up the base. And I think that people who have ataxia, not just in our Northeast region, but not only in the US, but the ataxia patients around the world, whether it's South America, Australia, Europe, UK, I think that the FDA needs to hear from you because this is about you, it's about your loved ones, it's about your future. And if this is reviewed and the FDA makes the determination that no, this really did not pass, then you've had your day to be heard. You are here, you're sizable, you are empowered, and I would encourage the patient population, together with National Ataxia Foundation, our spokes organization, to really let the voice be heard. We would like this reviewed. Let it go where it goes, but it needs to be reviewed.
I absolutely agree. So as the spouse of somebody that has ataxia, I have lived this frustration and disappointment that there is no treatment for ataxia. And so I'm very disappointed that the first opportunity to have something to help is not even reviewed. And so I would like to clarify a point that you both have made. This podcast is not about efficacy in any way, shape, or form. It's really about educating you to know that the FDA did not even review this. And that's really what we're asking for, is a review of this information. And to your point, Jeremy, let them be the deciding factor. That's what they do. And if there isn't enough evidence in the data, then they're not going to approve it. It won't move forward, but it needs to be at least given a chance. At least review it. And right. I think that's what we're saying.
And the FDA itself has their own regulations and guidelines that support the review of applications just like this. So there is a venue for doing this, and there's a precedent for doing this in many other disease spaces. We want that same opportunity for the SCA space. We feel that these patients deserve it. And, I hope patients will reach out to NAF. We've already had a flood of patients reaching out to us as well, asking, what can we do? What can we do? And we know there's going to be the listening session through NAF, the patient-focused drug development session that is coming in September. And that's a great place for patients to have a voice to talk about how they feel about this as well. Because, troriluzole is not an approved drug, right? It's a drug that we've been studying now for 7 years in this disease space. And as a scientist and a physician, right, we've had a lot of discussions with our key opinion leaders as we've developed this drug. And in the SCA3 population, which as Dr. Schmahmann was saying, it's the largest patient population with SCA, we're seeing clear effects of disease stability in this drug. And we're seeing disease modifying effects such that patients are having, in the all SCA group out to the long term, a delay in disease progression of 7 months over the course of a year. What does that translate into over 10 years? What would that mean to the patient community? And we would like the FDA, you can look at our data on our website. We have a set of research and development day slides to talk about where we've moved in this space over 7 years and how we've grown. We would like the FDA to look at this data too and give it its own critical evaluation to tell us what they think.
Absolutely. And for the patient population, it could be a gateway to other forms of treatment, other drugs, right?
Correct.
And so that's important too.
You make a great point. I think also, there are not many companies looking at treatment of ataxia. And if the FDA decides to swat this down because it didn't meet the primary endpoint that was a hoped for endpoint before the study got going, I'm just worried that this may actually may chase other companies away as well. And I think we do have to be concerned about that.
I absolutely agree with you, because we're already, in my opinion, behind. And we don't want to fall further behind because they've swatted this down and now people get discouraged, other companies get discouraged from doing this. And the other thing I really would like to say to the community is it's really hard sometimes to speak up because you feel like you're one voice and that your opinion might not matter or that you might not reach the right people. But your voice combined with other voices make a huge impact. So it is important to speak up because you can be part of a larger group that can make that impact.
And it's as a result of patients speaking up, actually, that Congress passed the ALS Act, which is not just for ALS. It's called the ALS Act, but it is designed to encompass all rare neurodegenerative diseases. And it was passed for the purpose of allowing the FDA to review filings for diseases which are fatal and have no available treatment modalities. If SCA doesn't fit that, I don't know what does. And in, again, a drug that hasn't been approved, troriluzole, but that has an incredible safety record. So it's a very safe drug. It's a pill. It's easy to take. We really want this filing to have its day in court for the FDA to give it its full evaluation. And we're extremely disappointed that the FDA refused to review it.
I think that patients and families may want to know what they can actually do about this, and I think that's a work in progress. We're working with the National Ataxia Foundation, the board, and the Medical Research Advisory Board will be getting together soon, and I suspect that they'll be putting out the word to let people know how they can then do this in a cohesive, collaborative, powerful way together, so our voice can be heard powerfully in a way that hopefully will have an impact.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that because that's absolutely happening, and I think it would be more powerful if it was structured in that way. Yeah, absolutely. So before we sign off, is there anything else that either of you would like to add for our patient population and their families?
I would like to say that I'm encouraged by how far we've come in this field in the last decade. We hear over and over again patients who come to specialists like Dr. Schmahmann saying, I was seen out by a neurologist in the community or by my physician who told me I have ataxia, but they told me that my diagnosis doesn't matter because there's nothing for me. So I think that awareness is coming along. I think that working towards treatment modalities has advanced so far. This is an opportunity for the SCA community to have their voice heard. and to advance this space even further.
Just keep the faith. We're stronger together. Let's let our voice be heard, and hopefully this will go the way that we'd like it to go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that you found this information helpful and at least feel a little bit more educated in this space. Thank you so much for tuning in.